Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. We bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Chris Jennings.
Joining us today for a quick bonus episode is David Schuessler, the National Director of Event Fundraising and R3 Programs. David, welcome to the DU Podcast.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
Awesome. You know, it's really surprising that we have not had you on the podcast before. I think you and I even scheduled a podcast, and then we didn't get to do it. So I'm just surprised we haven't had you on here before, but we really appreciate you coming on. What we're going to talk about today is Into the Vault 2, which is an online auction that DU kicked off today. And today is November 22nd, just for context here. We kicked off this Into the Vault program, Into the Vault 2 program, but we wanted to have David come on and kind of talk about this awesome online fundraising program that DU has going on. And so, David, just kind of explain the Into the Vault, and why is this Into the Vault 2?
Well, it's Into the Vault 2, and actually, Chris, you have to say it properly.
Into the Vault.
Into the Vault.
Into the Vault is a national online auction. We had our first one last year, kicked it off the Monday before Thanksgiving, run it to the Saturday following Thanksgiving weekend. It was so successful in the first year, we decided to go ahead and make this an annual event. Last year was born out of really the need inside of COVID at the height of the pandemic, when we were trying to do whatever we could to raise as much money as we could to keep Ducks Unlimited funded so our mission could be funded and we could do the conservation work we need to. Early in COVID, when we realized that our event system was going to be out of business for 2 to 3 months, at that time we just thought 2 or 3 months, we worked for about 17 straight days to build an online auction platform, something that Ducks Unlimited had never done. We wanted to hold our auctions inside of our events, kind of put them on a pedestal. And, you know, if you want this merchandise, this is where you need
you gotta
to
go
come.
to the
You got to
event.
go to the event.
Yeah.
But we realized that we had a bunch of event merchandise that we needed to sell. We weren't going to be able to get into event halls. So we built this online auction platform, made it through the second half of the fiscal year, that was 2020, and DU was still healthy. We sold our merchandise. But as we went into the summer of 2020, we realized COVID was going to impact us into the fall.
Yeah.
So we were thinking up ideas. What can we do? You were part of the tent sale that we held here in Memphis, where we took some of our sweatshirts and things that were sitting in a warehouse that didn't completely sell out from some of our online and direct mail programs to our members. And that was one of them. And then one day I was walking through the warehouse and looked up and I saw a pallet that was full of first of state stamp and prints. And I'd forgotten that pallet was there. It had come in as a donation through an estate. And I looked at it and thought to myself, we need to sell that. And so that made us start looking around and what did we have on hand to sell. And going into COVID, Ducks Unlimited's fundraising was operating at an all-time high. We were getting those types of donations in, we just weren't moving them through the events. Well, when we took stock in what we had, we were kind of amazed to see how much had been put into the vault and decided to go ahead and offer it to the public. We didn't know if it was going to be successful or not. Last year's auction became the largest auction that Ducks Unlimited had ever held.
Wow. Now, how much did you guys raise last year on this?
Right at $500,000. And that's net. That's real conservation dollars.
Yeah, and so this year, the difference is there's even more.
I would say more and better.
More and better, like higher quality. You know, I've thumbed through that this morning and went through and just looking at all the guns. And I mean, it's everything, you know, from 1974 DU Gun of the Year to, you know, some of these framed prints. And then also some cool stuff on there that's like unframed state or national, or I should say federal duck stamp stuff that's like unframed that you can get kind of cheap on there. I was looking at it and I was like, man, I figured these would be worth a lot more.
Yeah, I teased you with it.
Yeah,
right?
I know. You got me. You got me. But no, I mean, it's really exciting that you guys kicked off. Now, how long does it last?
It will last until 9 o'clock Eastern time on December the 4th.
Okay. And where can people find it? This is like the most important thing.
www.ducks.org/vault.
Yes.
That's
correct. And we'll put that in the show notes here so people can be able to find that very easy. But I wanted to talk to you about, there's some pretty cool stuff in there. There's some really neat items throughout this, and anyone that goes on there and looks is going to find something that they really like. But I want to know what your favorite item in this is.
My favorite item would have to be the hand-tinted Maynard Reese, and I guess I will call it a reproduction of the 1959 federal duck stamp that was called King Buck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Maynard had a good friend that had a dog that was a chocolate lab. And so what we know from last year's vault is Maynard had some editions of his 1959 King Buck run, and then he hand colorized those. That was a black and white print when he did that in 1959. Well, he had a friend with a chocolate lab, and he redid the 1959 print of his stamp to make it a chocolate lab. So it is a one-of-a-kind.
Yeah, wow.
The dog's name is Spud, and there's a little note in Maynard Reese's handwriting that names it Spud. Nothing else like it in the world, one of a kind. If somebody has a chocolate lab, it would be a true treasure.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has a chocolate lab named Spud, it would be an absolute treasure. Maynard passed away last year at 100 years of age, and he's the most celebrated federal duck stamp artist of all time. He had 5 winning entries into the federal duck stamp contest.
Yeah, that's an iconic stamp. Really, I mean, it's on T-shirts and hats, and
it is. The dog was out of Olin Nilo Farms, which was John Olin's property, and it was the first time that a dog was used in a federal duck stamp. So you see it on the front of a lot of pickups.
Oh yeah,
right?
And one interesting aspect, I think I read this the other day. That's the only duck stamp that they've ever done that has a dead duck on it.
That is correct.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool angle. Me personally, I'm a big fan of the original Ding Darling etchings. I think those are awesome, and it's listed right now for $5,000. So I got to go home and have a conversation with my wife. But it's a 1942. It's a honeymoon flight of pintails, and it's an etching with a small little handwritten note from Ding Darling as well. So I think that's pretty cool. That's just a fantastic, unique piece. Let's talk about the guns, because there's a lot of them in there.
There are. We have quite a number of. In fact, most of them are some of them you would consider vintage, but they're the former guns of the year. I think the earliest we have is a 75, which would be the 3rd year of our Gun of the Year program. A couple of 87s, those are considered the A5s, right when the real high-end laser engraving was coming about, and those to some collectors are considered the pinnacle piece.
Yeah. And those are the 50th anniversary.
Those are the 50th
DU.
anniversaries.
Those
That's
are
right.
special. Yeah. Those are cool.
And we've got some new in box guns from the DUX that we did not sell down there. I believe there's a Franke in there. There's an A5, an A300. So there's new guns that you can pull right out of the box and go to the range or go out to the duck blind with. And there's some that you're going to want to put in your safe.
And when I came back here to the studio, there was everyone was going back and forth and talking. And our former podcast producer, Clay Baird, was talking about he is getting a Don Knotts image. Just go ahead and explain that to me.
Well, so
mainly because I want to run this up.
So one of the things that's happened with this auction is that we've allowed it to become a consignment auction for our chapters around the country. And it's inevitable that a Ducks Unlimited chapter, and we have 2,400 of them, will get a donation locally that they don't know what to do with. They know that it has value. They don't want to just use it at their event because they want the item to bring its value. So when we let our volunteers and our staff know that this is now a consignment sale and we will sell those items for them and and then reallocate the money back to them for awards and things like that. You get some really interesting things that come in. And one that came out of Western Kansas was a signed Don Knotts headshot.
That's so cool.
And the same chapter sent us a Nicolas Cage signed headshot. So there's a little something for everybody.
Into the vault.
How'd you guys come up with that name? Is that something you came up with, or was it kind of a team of collective DU fundraising,
Our CEO, Adam Putnam, and I came up with that, along with Dana Barton, who runs our DUX, and Jimbo Robinson, who's our regional director here in Western Tennessee.
Very cool.
When I was an RD in the field, and I started with DU in '99 in North Carolina, I kept hearing about this vault, and it kind of became mythical. Oh, they've got all these things up in the vault in Memphis. It's just referred to as the vault. Technically, we do have a vault here, and we keep some of these items that we're selling. Some of this jewelry does stay in the vault.
Yeah,
we don't have a vault big enough for everything that we're selling in this auction. But so, given that that's a moniker that a lot of our volunteers use, we thought that we would paint the picture of opening up the vault, and really that's exactly what we've done.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So it lasts for 12 days.
Yep.
And people can find it ducks.org/vault. What are some of the other items that kind of stick out to you? Do you have anything else you want to tease on this?
Yeah. So here's my second favorite. Okay, here's my second favorite. So Bruce Cochran is a longtime outdoor cartoonist. I bet everybody that listens to this podcast has seen his work. He is carried in the NRA magazine, probably the Wild Turkey magazine. I think he's done some stuff in our magazine.
Lots of DU magazines.
Yeah, lots of DU magazines. And we've actually put his art in the past inside of our event merchandise program. Probably the most famous is the Duck Hunter, and it's a cartoon, and the guy has red eyes and a patch on his waders, and then it's labeled all over it. I think just about every duck camp that's older than 10 years old probably has a framed copy of the Duck Hunter somewhere in the camp. As we were receiving donations this past summer, a chapter outside of Kansas City on the Kansas side sent us a bunch of Bruce Cochran original cartoons.
Oh, wow.
And one of them was the Duck Hunter. Now, the Duck Hunter had run inside of our event merchandise package, so I got my jeweler's loop out, and I'm looking, and sure enough, you can see the colored pencil marks. It's the original.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to call the regional director, Chris Young, out there. I said, Chris, how did your chapter get this? One of the volunteers was a very close friend of Bruce Cochran's, who lived in that area. When Bruce relocated to Florida, he said, here's a bunch of original, some of my original work, see if you can make some money with it. Great example, the chapter has tried, they've, in their events, knew that they couldn't get the bid that the piece deserved, so they sent it to the vault, and I think we have that one listed at about $1,500. But for a collector of, everything DU or everything waterfowl, that's one that I'm actually going to go home and have a conversation about.
That's a pretty valuable.
Because that's a piece of our history,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah, you talked about the unique items, and I just noticed that and I was going to ask you this question, but you already, how you explained how other states and committees sent stuff in, but I was like, where did the two South Dakota 22 target pistols come from? It's just like, you've got all these guns of the year, and then there's these, and I was like, whoa, those are kind of cool. That's a different thing.
Came from the regional director in South Dakota, who I'm sure there was a chapter that had it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so there's stuff from all over. One of the trips that received the quickest bidding this morning was the Shinnecock golf trip, which is a famous. I'm not a golfer, but I know that it's a famous private club up in the Northeast. They were generous enough to donate a foursome to one of our chapters there, and it immediately started getting bids because that's not something you can go and buy.
Yeah, it's just a lot of very, very unique items that I think, especially our audience here on the podcast, can appreciate the unique aspect of some of these things. It's pretty cool.
We've got a Joe Bulcher, who is a call maker, who used to do all of our commemorative duck calls inside of our event program. Somebody has a prototype that he sent to Ducks Unlimited that has wood ducks carved on it. It was not selected for our package. I don't know how the chapter received the prototype type back from DU.
Yeah.
But now we have it in the auction. It's got some bids on it right now. It's just, every item has a story. That's what's so neat about it.
Yeah. And then we just have to make sure we run up that Don Knotts picture. That's our gift to Clay with this.
It's the last item in the collectibles category.
Oh, now we're really
if
pointing
you need to
people
find
to
it, that's exactly where you need to go.
Perfect. This is a good opportunity here while I've got you on, and this kind of goes in as far as with all events, and something that we'll have to bring you back on here sometime soon and have just an event fundraising conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is a good opportunity as an introduction to kind of explain to our audience, anyone out there who may not know, where does this money go that you're raising? And how, you know what I mean? Like, people would ask that. We get some of those questions all the time. Where do you spend his money? But this is like unrestricted funding.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very cool. So kind of explain that process.
So inside of Ducks Unlimited's kind of terminology, this goes towards our general fund. And so what that allows is the finance committee, which is made up of volunteers from around the country. Every year they gather in the spring and take a look at the organization's budget. And so the most precious dollar that any organization, I don't care if it's Ducks Unlimited, the United Way, the most precious dollar is a dollar that is given with no strings attached to it. You mentioned unrestricted income. So the organization can spend those unrestricted dollars wherever our science tells us they need to be spent.
Yeah.
Now, of course, some of it is going to pay operational costs. Every organization has to do that. But our finance committee would look at the budget and say, okay, we're going to send, X amount of unrestricted dollars to the prairies in Canada. We're going to send some to the Western Regional Office in Sacramento. Some's going to go to D.C. so we can make sure that we continue to have strong NACA programs and things of that nature. So just like all of the dollars that go into our or that come in from our events that are those unfettered dollars, the dollars from this auction does the exact same thing.
Cool. I just wanted you to explain that. And like I said, we're going to bring you on and have another conversation regarding everything event fundraising, because I think that was the original plan when I asked you to come on. It was probably 6-8 months ago. But really kind of get in the weeds event fundraising and explain the processes and the awesome things that are going on out there. David, I appreciate you coming on. This has been great. I just want to remind everyone they can go visit ducks.org/vault and start bidding on these, especially the Don Knotts one, just for me. But no, there's a lot of great stuff on there. And is there anything else that you want to mention about the vault before we jump off of here?
I would, for those who want to wait until the last moment to bid, and that's always a good game plan in any
auction strategist.
Yes. If that is your strategy, let me give you a tip that we learned from all of our auctions, online auctions, not just this one. A computer cuts that thing off, not a human finger. And at 9:00 Eastern time on Saturday night, December the 4th, when that second hits it, if you believe you're going to be bidding on an item that everybody wants, put in your maximum amount 5 minutes before it closes. Because if there are 5 people that click bid now at the same time, that computer chooses whose finger hit it first and not a human. And we do not have replicas of any of our items. So
That's
bid
cool.
early and just bid your max, and that way you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, that's a good way to not set yourself up for failure. So go ahead and just max it out early.
That's right.
David, this has been great. Thanks for jumping on. Like I said, we're going to get you back on here real soon.
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
I'd like to thank David Schuessler for joining us today on the podcast, talk about Into the Vault 2, exciting new online auction that just kicked off today, and we hope everyone gets on there and bids. I'd like to thank our producer, Chris Isaac, for doing a great job of putting the podcast together and getting it out to you. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for joining us on the DU podcast and supporting wetlands conservation.
Into the vault.
Into the Vault.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.